I used to travel constantly for my work as a medical equipment technician. Because of that, I slept in more hotels than I can count. Some were great. Others were the kind that make your skin crawl the second you walk in. But there's one hotel I will never forget. To this day, I still don't understand what I saw in that building, or how it was even possible. This happened 3 years ago in Colorado. I had just finished a long job in a rural hospital and didn't feel like driving back home. So I booked a stay at a small, older hotel off the highway. The woman at the front desk looked tired, as if she had been awake for days. She checked me in without much conversation, handed me the room key, and said, "Elevator's down, take the stairs." That didn't bother me. The building was only 4 floors. My room was on the 3rd. When I reached the 3rd floor, though, something felt wrong. The hallway lights flickered, faintly buzzing. The carpet smelled like mold that had been soaked and dried hundreds of times. And the whole floor was dead silent, like I was the only living person there. My room, 317, was at the end of the hallway. Inside, it looked normal enough. A bed, a desk, a TV that probably hadn't been replaced since the early 2000s. But the temperature was freezing, even though the thermostat was set to 75. I tried to ignore it. After showering, I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. Maybe 2 hours passed before I heard something. A door slamming down the hallway. I froze. There were no other cars in the parking lot when I arrived, and the entire walk to my room had been completely silent. Another slam, this time closer. I stood up and cracked the room's door open. The hallway was dark now, except for one light flickering near the far corner. But what I noticed next made my stomach drop. A door was open at the very end of the hall. I didn't remember any rooms being down there. Just a wall. I stepped out a little further, staring at the open doorway. The room number was barely visible under the dim light. Room 330. That didn't make sense. My room was at the end. There was number 330 on this floor. I pulled out the hotel map next to the phone. Rooms ended at 317. It was impossible for anything else to be on this side of the floor. But the door was still open, slowly creaking, like someone had pushed it moments earlier. Against my better judgment, I whispered, "Hello." Something moved inside. Not footsteps. Not breathing. More like fabric dragging across carpet. I shut my door and locked every single lock. That night, I barely slept. Every hour, I woke to the sound of something tapping lightly against my door. Not knocking, tapping. Like someone running their fingers across the wood. By sunrise, I was done. I packed my things and went straight to the lobby. The tired woman from the night before was still there. I told her everything. The slamming, the hallway going dark, the door to room 330. Her face went pale. "Who showed you that room?" she asked. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard and shook her head. "That room doesn't exist anymore. We had a situation years ago. The entire section was sealed. No one is supposed to be on that side of the floor." I showed her a picture on my phone. I had taken one of the open door because it creeped me out so badly. She stared at it with pure terror. The doorway was clearly visible, but not the number. And standing inside the darkness, in the shape of a person, was a tall, thin shadow that hadn't been there when I took the photo. The woman whispered, "You need to leave. Now. And whatever you saw last night, don't go looking for answers." I listened. But sometimes, late at night, I go back to that photo and I can't help but wonder, if room 330 isn't there anymore, what opened that door? And what was waiting inside? 3 summers ago, I took a cross-country trip with my sister. We stayed at cheap motels along the way, the kind where you double-lock the door and sleep with one eye open. But one night in Oklahoma was on another level. We checked into a room on the 1st floor. Everything looked normal at first. Basic, old, a little damp. We were used to that. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Knocking. Inside the wall. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't the room next door. It was directly behind the headboard, like someone was knocking just inches away from my skull. My sister was still asleep. I put my ear closer to the wall. Knock. 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 Slow, spaced out, like a pattern. Then I heard something faint behind it. A voice. Not words. Just a whisper, a desperate rasping breath. I shook my sister awake. She listened for a second, then jumped out of bed. "What the hell is that?" The knocking suddenly stopped. Dead silence. Like whoever, or whatever, was inside the wall realized we were listening. We were both freaked out. but too scared to open the door and leave. Then the smell came. A horrible rotting stench, like something dead was directly under the bed. The vents started making a strange rattling noise. And then we heard it again. Not knocking this time. Scratching. Slow, weak, painful scratching. From inside the wall. We grabbed our things and ran straight to the night clerk, who looked way too calm when we explained everything. He sighed and said, "Yeah, you're not the first people to complain about that room." I asked him what he meant. He leaned forward and whispered, "The maintenance guys swear there's something trapped in the walls. But every time we cut them open, they're empty." We changed rooms, but didn't sleep a second that night. To this day, I still hear those knocks sometimes when I'm falling asleep. 3 slow taps, like someone begging to be let out. I was driving home from my late shift, taking the same empty rural road I'd driven for years. It was close to 2 a.m., fog rolling across the asphalt like slow-moving smoke. I remember thinking how unnaturally quiet everything felt. No cars, no wind, not even the usual insects tapping on the windshield. Then, just a few minutes before the old bridge, I saw something standing on the side of the road. Tall, thin, completely still. At first I thought it was just a tree stump, until its head slowly turned toward my car. I hit the brakes, heart pounding. My headlights washed over the thing, and that's when I realized it wasn't a tree at all. It had a long, narrow face, skin stretched tight like old leather, and eyes reflecting the light even though they looked completely black. As I stared at it, the head twitched in a way no human neck could ever move. And then it stepped toward the road. One slow, dragging step, then another. I hit the brakes, heart pounding. My headlights washed over the thing, and that's when I realized it wasn't a tree at all. It had a long, narrow face, skin stretched tight like old leather, and eyes reflecting the light even though they looked completely black. As I stared at it, the head twitched in a way no human neck could ever move. And then it stepped toward the road. One slow, dragging step, then another. I sped all the way home and practically jumped out of my car before it stopped moving. My house was dark, no streetlights, no neighbors awake. I rushed to unlock the door, but before I stepped inside, something told me to look back. There, at the end of my driveway, partially hidden by the fog, stood the same tall figure. It hadn't chased me on the road. It had simply followed me. I locked every door and window, adrenaline shaking through my hands. But even inside, I felt watched. My dog refused to go near the front hallway, just stared at the door whining. Around 3:20 a.m., I heard slow footsteps outside the porch. 1, 2, 3, like someone extremely tall trying not to make noise. Then something scraped against the window. A soft, deliberate dragging sound. When I finally peeked, just for a second, I saw a tall shadow pressed against the glass. A long face, black eyes staring straight into my living room. And then it whispered my name. There's an old highway outside my town that nobody uses anymore. Along it sits a motel that's been abandoned since the early 2000s. Rusted signs, smashed windows, weeds growing through the parking lot. Last winter, after my car broke down during a snowstorm, I had no choice but to wait for the tow truck inside the lobby. The place smelled like mold and wet carpet, but the cold outside was worse. As I moved deeper into the lobby, my flashlight hit a door at the back with a faded, crooked number. Room 12. That's when I heard a voice whisper, soft, breathy, coming from inside. I froze. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Come in." I told myself it had to be the wind, or the building settling, or maybe even an animal trapped inside. But the voice didn't sound like any of that. It sounded human. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door. It creaked open into a room that looked untouched for decades. Curtains hanging in shreds, wallpaper peeled off, and a broken TV sitting on the floor. The voice whispered again, right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. My breath came out in white puffs as the temperature dropped suddenly. The air felt heavy, like the room itself was closing in on me. My flashlight flickered. Once, twice. Then the walls changed. For a split second, I saw something burned into the wallpaper, charred outlines of hands, dozens of them, reaching outward. And in the center of the far wall, a large, dark silhouette stood perfectly still. I blinked, and the room went back to normal. But now the door had shut behind me. I tried the door, it wouldn't budge. As I kept pulling, the whispering grew louder, circling the room like someone pacing around me. My light flickered again, and when it came back, a tall, ash-black figure stood in the corner. Its head was tilted unnaturally to one side. Its mouth stretched into a wide, jagged smile. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing took a slow step toward me, whispering words I didn't understand. Low, vibrating, like they were being spoken right inside my skull. I tried the door, it wouldn't budge. As I kept pulling, the whispering grew louder, circling the room like someone pacing around me. My light flickered again, and when it came back, a tall, ash-black figure stood in the corner. Its head was tilted unnaturally to one side. Its mouth stretched into a wide, jagged smile. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing took a slow step toward me, whispering words I didn't understand. Low, vibrating, like they were being spoken right inside my skull.